The sterile smell of antiseptic hung in the air, mingling with the muted sounds of monitors beeping rhythmically in the background. I stood just outside the luxurious hospital room, my heart racing as I peered through the glass. Inside, the figure of Mr. Hawthorne lay motionless, connected to a web of machines that kept him alive. The golden light from the afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, casting an ethereal glow over the scene. Yet the atmosphere felt heavy, with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. I could see his family gathered around him, their faces etched with worry and the subtle undertones of desperation. It was a twisted irony that the man who had amassed a fortune and commanded respect was now reduced to this, fighting for breath while surrounded by those who might have loved him once, but whose true motivations were now laid bare. They were like vultures, circling a wounded prey, and it made my skin crawl. "Do you think we should call a lawyer?" I heard a voice say, breaking through my thoughts. It was Daniel, the eldest son, his brow furrowed with concern. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a hint of vulnerability that made him seem almost boyish despite his age. I could see the tension in his posture. He was the one who felt the weight of the family legacy pressing down on his chest. "I just don't understand how he could let it come to this," another voice chimed in, belonging to Claire, the youngest daughter. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. "He should have made plans for this. What if he doesn't wake up? What are we supposed to do then?" "Stop it, Claire, this isn't the time," Daniel snapped, casting a glance over his shoulder towards me as if realizing I was eavesdropping. I quickly stepped back, hiding in the corridor's shadows, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away from the unfolding drama. The family dynamics were as twisted as the machines keeping Mr. Hawthorne alive. "But we need to think about our future," Claire insisted, her voice rising. "Do you think we can just sit here and wait for him to wake up? It could be weeks, months even. I have bills to pay, you know." "We all have bills to pay, Claire," Daniel replied, his patience wearing thin. "But fighting amongst ourselves won't help him. We need to be united just in case... "In case he dies, is that what you're saying?" Claire interjected, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You mean in case we lose our chance at the inheritance?" The word hung in the air, a heavy weight that shifted the atmosphere in the room. I felt a pang of sympathy for them, realizing that they were trapped in a web of greed and familial obligation. But beneath that surface, I also felt a surge of determination. This was my moment, and I couldn't let it slip away. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open, stepping into the room with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. I knew I had to make my presence known, even if it meant shattering the fragile facade of unity they were trying to maintain. The family turned to look at me, their expressions a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Who are you?" Daniel asked, his voice low and cautious. I could sense the tension in the air as their eyes narrowed, scrutinizing my every move. "I'm Clara," I said, my voice steady, "and I'm here to see Mr. Hawthorne." "You can't just barge in here like this," Claire snapped, her defensiveness palpable. "This is a private family matter." "Actually, it's a matter of family that concerns me as well," I replied, my heart racing yet resolute. "I believe I am Mr. Hawthorne's daughter." Silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. Their faces morphed from disbelief to shock, as if I had just announced I was an alien from another planet. Daniel's jaw dropped slightly, and Claire's eyes widened in astonishment. I could almost hear the gears turning in their minds as they tried to process my unexpected claim. "You can't be serious," Daniel finally managed to say, disbelief dripping from his words. "There's no way he has a daughter we never knew about." "Why would I lie about this?" I countered, my voice tinged with frustration. "I have proof." "What kind of proof?" Claire asked, crossing her arms defensively. "A birth certificate, a DNA test. You can't just waltz in here claiming to be family without anything to back it up." I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small old locket that had been passed down through my mother's side of the family. It had always been a source of comfort for me, a connection to a past I barely understood. I opened it, revealing a faded photograph of Mr. Hawthorne with a beautiful woman who bore a striking resemblance to me. "This was my mother," I said softly, feeling the weight of their gazes on me. "And this is him." Daniel stepped forward, his brow furrowed as he examined the locket. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, though his voice held a tremor of uncertainty. "You could have gotten that from anywhere." "Maybe," I replied, a flicker of frustration igniting within me. "But I have memories, conversations. My mother always talked about him. She loved him." "Why didn't she ever come forward?" Claire pressed, skepticism lacing her tone. "Why wait until now?" I took a deep breath, willing myself to remain calm. Because she wanted to protect me. After what happened between them, she felt it was better to stay away. But Mr. Hawthorne reached out to me before his accident. I was supposed to see him. The tension in the room thickened as they exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, the realization that perhaps, just perhaps, I wasn't lying. The air felt electric with possibilities, and I could almost taste the bitterness of doubt hanging in the atmosphere. "How can we be sure you're telling the truth?" Daniel asked, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying a flicker of doubt. "You could be here for the money." I shook my head, feeling the weight of their suspicions. "I'm not here for the money. I want to know my father. I want to understand what happened." "Your father?" Claire scoffed, her skepticism returning. "You think just because you have a locket, you can waltz in here and claim a place in this family?" "I'm not trying to disrupt your lives," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I just want to understand who I am and where I come from." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the tension in the air, thick as fog, as they processed my words. I had stepped into a hornet's nest, and I could almost hear the buzzing of their thoughts as they wrestled with their emotions. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "We need to discuss this," he said, turning his back on me, his face contorted in thought. "But right now our priority is our father." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. I had made my claim, but the road ahead was still fraught with obstacles. As they returned their attention to Mr. Hawthorne, I lingered in the doorway, my heart pounding with the adrenaline of the confrontation. I was in their world now, a world of secrets and unfulfilled promises. The stakes were higher than I had anticipated, and I knew that the truth would unravel in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. But one thing was clear: I would stop at nothing to uncover the mystery of my past, even if it meant digging through the layers of deception that surrounded the Hawthorne name. The battle had just begun, and I was determined to fight for my place in this twisted tale of family and fortune. The hospital room, with its sterile scent and fluorescent lights, seemed to pulse with tension as I stepped aside, my heart racing. The nurse, a kind-looking woman with gentle eyes, motioned for me to follow her to a quieter corner of the corridor. I could feel the weight of the family's suspicion still hanging in the air like a thick fog, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched from the shadows. "Clara, right?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen you here before." I nodded, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "Yes, I've been visiting Mr. Hawthorne. I'm his daughter." The nurse studied me for a moment, her expression a mixture of sympathy and concern. "I believe you, but you need to be careful. The Hawthorne family is not known for their kindness. They can be ruthless when it comes to their inheritance." My stomach twisted at her words. I had felt the hostility in the room, the way Daniel and his siblings had looked at me, as if I was some sort of intruder. "I understand," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "But I have to find out the truth. I need to know if I really am his daughter." "Just be cautious," she urged, glancing over her shoulder to ensure no one was listening. "I've seen how they can turn on someone they perceive as a threat. If they find out you're here to claim anything, it could get ugly." I swallowed hard, the gravity of her warning sinking in. "Thank you for your concern. I'll be careful." As the nurse walked away, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Was I truly ready to dive into this murky water? I had always thought this was a quest for the truth, but now it felt perilous. What if the family was hiding something more sinister than just wealth and power? Meanwhile, in another part of the hospital, Daniel was pacing the floor of the waiting room, his mind racing with thoughts of me and my sudden appearance. He was determined to uncover the truth behind my claims, but the more he dug, the more questions he had. Dad always had secrets, he muttered to himself, frustration palpable in his voice. What if Clara is telling the truth? What if she really is his daughter? He ran a hand through his hair, contemplating the implications. If I was indeed Mr. Hawthorne's child, that would change everything. Suddenly his phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. Be careful, Daniel. There's more to Clara than you think. She might not be who she claims to be. His heart raced. Who was this person? What did they know? He thought of confronting the family, but the growing unease in his gut told him to tread lightly. Trust was a fragile thing, especially in a family like the Hawthornes. Who are you? He whispered to the empty room, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew he had to investigate further, but where to start? He couldn't just ask his family, they were already on edge about Clara's presence. Back in the hospital corridor, I sat on a bench, my mind swirling with thoughts of what lay ahead. The nurse's warning echoed in my head as I pulled out the locket again, the photo of my mother and Mr. Hawthorne staring back at me. The resemblance was uncanny, and I felt a sense of connection, yet doubt loomed large. Should I really be here? I thought, biting my lip. What if I'm wrong about all of this? As I pondered my next move, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Pulling it out, I was surprised to see a message from an unknown sender. You need to leave town. It's not safe for you here. My heart dropped. Who was sending me this message? Was it someone from the Hawthorne family, or was it a stranger trying to protect me? I looked around the bustling hospital, feeling like I was in a cage with walls closing in on me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I can't leave now, I whispered to myself, not when I've come this far. But the fear gnawed at me. What if someone was truly out to get me? I had already felt the hostility from Daniel and his siblings. What if they were conspired against me? I pushed myself up from the bench, resolve hardening in my chest. I need to find Daniel, I thought. He might know something more about my father's past. As I made my way through the hospital, I spotted Daniel standing near a vending machine, his brow furrowed in thought. I hesitated for a moment, considering the warning I had just received. But then I remembered the locket, the connection I felt. I approached him, my heart pounding. Daniel! I called, my voice breaking through his reverie. He turned, surprise evident in his eyes. Clara, he replied cautiously. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, I insisted, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. I think we need to figure this out together. He crossed his arms defensively, but I could see a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. About what? Your claims, or my father's secrets? Both, I said firmly. I want to understand him and I want the truth. You must have questions too. Daniel looked torn, battling between skepticism and an undeniable urge to know more. Fine, he said at last, his voice low, but we have to be careful. If anyone sees us, we won't be long, I promised. Let's talk somewhere private. We found a secluded corner of the hospital, the sterile white walls around us somehow more comforting than the chaos outside. As we settled into our conversation, I felt the tension between us begin to shift. Okay, Clara, he said, his tone softer now. What do you know about my father's past? I swallowed hard, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My mother. She used to tell me stories about Mr. Hawthorne. She claimed he was a man of great wealth and power, but there was always something hidden beneath the surface. When I found this locket, I knew I had to seek him out. Daniel's eyes narrowed, clearly skeptical. And you expect me to believe that you're his daughter just because of a locket? I took a deep breath, trying to quell my rising frustration. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I have memories, Daniel. Memories of him reaching out to me before his accident. I need you to trust me. We can figure this out together. He studied me for a moment, the gears turning in his mind. What if you're wrong? What if this is all just a ploy for money? I shook my head vehemently. I don't want his money. I want the truth. I want to honor my mother's memory and understand the man who might be my father. Daniel's expression softened, a glimmer of understanding crossing his features. Okay, he said at last, let's dig deeper. But I need to warn you, if the family finds out about this, it could get messy. I'm prepared for that, I assured him. I have to know. In that moment, it felt like we were allies in a battle against a much larger enemy, the secrets of the Hawthorne family. I stood in front of the large mahogany door, my heart racing as I prepared to confront Daniel. The weight of my revelations about our father pressed heavily on my shoulders. My memories of Mr. Hawthorne were vivid and strong, and I needed to share them with him. I took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," a voice called from inside. I pushed the door open and stepped into the dimly lit office, the scent of polished wood and old books filling the air. Daniel sat behind a large desk, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed a stack of papers. When he looked up, his expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "Clara," he said, his voice cool, "what do you want?" "I want to talk," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady despite the tension that crackled between us. "About our father." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "What could you possibly know about him that I don't? I've spent my life learning everything I can about my father." I took a step closer, emboldened by the urgency of my mission. "You only know what he wanted you to know. There's more to him than the businessman you idolize. I have memories, Daniel. Memories of him reaching out to me before his accident. He wanted me in his life." Daniel's skepticism was palpable. "And why would he keep you a secret? Why wouldn't he have mentioned you to us, his real family?" "Because he was scared," I answered, my voice rising slightly. "Scared of what you and the others would think. He loved my mother, and he tried to protect us both. I know he was estranged from you all, but he cared. I know he did." He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "What do you remember?" he finally asked, his tone softening just a fraction. I swallowed hard, the memories flooding back. I remember the warmth of his smile, the way he would tell me stories about his life, his dreams. I remember the way he spoke of ambition and hard work. He wanted me to understand the value of perseverance, even if it meant keeping me away from you and your world. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "And what were those dreams? What did he want for you?" "To know that I could achieve anything," I said, my voice steadier now. "He wanted me to be strong, independent. He had plans to bring me into his life, to share his world with me. I know he did." He studied me closely, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something, curiosity perhaps. "And you're sure this isn't just a fantasy you've built up in your head?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I have proof," I said finally, pulling the locket from my pocket. I opened it, showing him the worn photograph of Mr. Hawthorne and my mother. "This is the link between us. He may not have acknowledged me publicly, but I am his daughter." Daniel examined the locket, his eyes narrowing as he processed the implications. "This could easily be faked." "Is this what you think? That I'm here to scheme and manipulate? I'm not looking for a handout, Daniel. I just want the truth. I want to know who I am, who my father was, and why he kept me hidden from you." He set the locket down, a conflicted expression crossing his face. "What do you want from me, Clara?" "Understanding. Maybe some help in uncovering the truth. If there's more to our father's life, if he had a hidden marriage or any other secrets, then it's time we both find out." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You really believe that, don't you? That he might have a whole other family we never knew about?" "I do," I replied, my heart pounding. "And if it's true, we need to confront it together. We can't let the family's legacy be built on lies." He nodded slowly, a flicker of resolve igniting in his eyes. "All right, let's find out what we can. But you have to promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't let the family's greed taint your intentions. If you're really who you say you are, then you have a place here. But if this is just a scheme..." He let the implication hang in the air. "I understand," I said, feeling a sense of solidarity begin to form. "I'm not here to wreck your life. I just want to understand my own." As we began to sift through documents and family records, a sense of urgency enveloped us. We pored over old journals, letters, and photographs, searching for any clue that would shed light on Mr. Hawthorne's past. Hours slipped away, and the tension in the room shifted, evolving from suspicion to a shared quest for truth. "Look at this," Daniel said suddenly, holding up a faded letter. "It's addressed to someone named Margaret. I've never heard of her. Do you think she could be—" I leaned in closer, my heart racing. "It's possible. If she was important enough to be mentioned in his correspondence, then who knows what role she played in his life?" Daniel's eyes sparkled with determination. "We need to find out who she is. If there's a chance she's connected to you, we have to follow this lead." As the night wore on, we delved deeper into the mystery of Mr. Hawthorne's life. With each document we uncovered, the pieces began to fall into place, painting a picture of a man who had lived a life far more complicated than I had ever imagined. Just when I thought we had gathered all the clues, Daniel's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "It's Miss Thompson. She wants to meet." "About what?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "She said she's investigating your claims, and she wants to discuss her findings." "Do you trust her?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Daniel shrugged, his features tense. "I don't know. She's always been loyal to the family, but she might have her own agenda." "Then we need to be careful," I replied, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "We can't let her undermine our search for the truth." "Agreed," he said, determination firming his voice. "Let's meet her together. We'll stand strong, whatever her motives might be." As we prepared to confront Ms. Thompson, I felt a mixture of hope and dread coursing through me. The stakes had never been higher, and I knew that every revelation would only deepen the complexity of the ties between us. If we were going to uncover the truth, we would need to navigate the treacherous waters of family loyalty and ambition, something I was beginning to understand all too well. But as we gathered our documents and steeled ourselves for the confrontation, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only scratching the surface of a much larger mystery. What if there were even darker secrets lurking in the shadows of Mr. Hawthorne's life? The thought sent chills down my spine, but I steeled myself. I had come too far to turn back now. The truth awaited, and I was determined to find it, no matter the cost. The dim light of the hospital room cast long shadows on the sterile walls, and I felt the weight of the old letter in my hand, as if it were a secret heavy enough to shatter the silence. I had stumbled upon it in a dusty box, tucked away in my mother's belongings, hidden beneath faded photographs and yellowed papers. The letter, addressed to my mother from Mr. Hawthorne, hinted at a connection that could unravel everything I thought I knew about my past. "Clara," Daniel said, his voice breaking the quiet. He had been studying me intently, his brow furrowed as he processed the implications of the letter. "You really think this could mean something? That your mother and my father—" "I don't just think it, Daniel, I know it." I met his gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. "This letter mentions a meeting they had in the early 80s. My mother always said she knew someone important, but she never revealed who." "She didn't want to get my hopes up, I suppose." Daniel leaned closer, eager yet cautious. "What does it say exactly?" I unfolded the letter carefully, the paper crinkling softly. "It talks about love and regret, how he wanted to see her again, but was afraid of the repercussions. It's dated just before I was born." I glanced at him, searching for a reaction. "If he was my father, then I have a claim, a right to this fortune." Daniel's expression softened, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. "I can't believe this. I mean, if this is true, it changes everything." "Exactly," I replied, adrenaline coursing through me. "But we need to be careful. If the family finds out about this before we can confirm it, they'll do everything to stop me." As if on cue, the door swung open, and in walked Daniel's sister Emily, her expression a mix of disdain and curiosity. "What are you two whispering about, plotting my father's demise?" I quickly tucked the letter away, my heart racing. "Just discussing family matters," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Family matters, huh?" Emily stepped further into the room, arms crossed. "You really think you belong here, don't you, Clara? That you have some right to this family?" I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "I do, Emily. If the letter is valid, I have more right than you might think." She scoffed, shaking her head in disbelief. "You think a piece of paper can erase years of family history, of love and loyalty? You're a stranger here, and you always will be." "Emily, this isn't just about you," Daniel interjected, his voice firm. This is about the truth. Our father had a life before us and we have to understand it. Clara deserves to know her history. Deserves? Emily spat, her voice rising. What about what we deserve? What about our father's legacy? You're willing to throw it all away for some woman who claims to be his daughter? Enough, I shouted, surprising myself with the force of my voice. I'm not here to destroy anyone's legacy. I'm here to find out the truth about my family, just like you are. Daniel looked between us, his expression torn. We need to work together. Clara's right. If we want answers, we can't let anger get in the way. Emily rolled her eyes, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty behind her bravado. Fine, but don't expect me to jump on your little bandwagon, Clara. You'll have to prove yourself. Prove myself? I echoed, incredulous. I'm not here to play games. I'm here because I have a right to be. This isn't just about money, it's about understanding who I am. Before Emily could retort, the phone rang, cutting through the tension in the room. I glanced at Daniel, who raised an eyebrow, silently urging me to answer it. I picked up the receiver, my heart racing as I pressed it to my ear. Hello, I said cautiously. Clara? A low voice rasped, sending chills down my spine. You need to be careful. Someone in the Hawthorne family is planning to sabotage your claim. What? Who is this? I demanded, my pulse quickening. Doesn't matter. Just know that they're watching you. If you want to survive this, keep your head down and be careful who you trust. The line went dead, and I stood there, the receiver still pressed to my ear. Clara? Daniel's voice broke through my shock. What's wrong? I placed the phone down, my hands trembling. Someone just called. They warned me that someone in the family is planning to undermine my claim. Emily's eyes widened, and she glanced at Daniel. What does that mean? It means I can't trust anyone, I replied, my mind racing. If they're willing to sabotage me, then they'll go to any lengths to protect their interests. Daniel's expression shifted from concern to determination. We have to find out who it is before it's too late. We can't let them win. I nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. You're right. We need to investigate this. If we can find out who's behind it, we can expose their motives. Let's start by talking to the lawyer, Daniel suggested. Ms. Thompson has been digging into all of this as well. Maybe she knows something. Yeah, because I totally trust her, I scoffed. She's just as likely to be part of the problem as anyone else. Maybe, Daniel conceded, but she's also the only one with access to the legal documents. We need her help, even if we can't trust her fully. Fine, I relented. Let's go before anyone else finds out what we're planning. As we made our way out of the hospital room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every corner I turned, every shadow I passed, I half expected someone to leap out and confront me. The stakes were rising, and the tension in the air was palpable. Clara, Daniel said suddenly, stopping me in the hallway. If it comes down to it, are you ready to fight for what's yours? I met his gaze, the gravity of his question weighing heavily on me. I've already lost so much. I won't back down now. Good, he replied, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. We're in this together. Together. It was a strange thought, one that held a mix of hope and uncertainty, but as the shadows loomed larger around us, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. As I stood next to Daniel, the tension in the air was palpable. We had decided to take the plunge together, to uncover the truth behind the shadowy dealings that seemed to surround the Hawthorne family like a thick fog. It was as if the walls of the mansion itself were whispering secrets, and we were determined to listen. The stakes felt higher than ever, with Clara's status as Mr. Hawthorne's heir hanging precariously in the balance. Clara, are you sure about this? Daniel asked, his voice low but earnest, his brow furrowed with concern. We're stepping into dangerous territory here. I nodded, feeling a mix of unease and determination. I have to know. I can't let them push me out without a fight. If I'm truly his daughter, I deserve to understand who my father was and what he was involved in. Daniel glanced at me, the flicker of admiration in his eyes almost warming the chill that clung to the air. All right then, let's start with the records in his study. If there's anything out of the ordinary, it's bound to be there. We made our way to the study, A grand room filled with dark wood and leather, where the air was thick with the scent of aged paper and secrets long kept. As we entered, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was a space where decisions had been made, lives altered, and now it felt like the very ground beneath us was a battleground. I stepped toward the large oak desk, my fingers brushing over the polished surface. "Where do you think he kept the important documents?" I asked, my heart racing. Daniel walked over to the shelves lined with books and files. "Probably in the drawers," he suggested, already pulling one open. The drawer creaked ominously, revealing a collection of papers, some neatly stacked, others haphazardly tossed aside. As Daniel sifted through the papers, I set my gaze on a family portrait hanging on the wall. It captured a moment in time. Mr. Hawthorne, vibrant and authoritative, a younger Daniel by his side, and a woman whose identity I didn't recognize. I felt an inexplicable connection to the image, a yearning for answers about my own past. "Clara," Daniel's voice broke through my reverie. I turned to him, and he held up a yellowed envelope, the seal cracked and faded. "Look at this." My heart raced as I approached him. "What is it?" He opened the envelope carefully and revealed a set of documents. As I peered over his shoulder, my breath hitched. It was a marriage certificate. My mother's name was on it, along with Mr. Hawthorne's. "Can you believe this?" Daniel whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This changes everything." I took the document from him, absorbing the information. "He was married to my mother. This proves my connection. I'm not just an imposter," I said, my voice tinged with both triumph and trepidation. Daniel nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. But why would he keep this a secret? What else was he hiding? Before I could answer, the door swung open, and in walked Ms. Thompson, the family lawyer, her presence commanding and poised. "What are you two doing in here?" she asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. I quickly hid the marriage certificate behind my back, heart racing. Just, looking for something," I stammered, trying to sound casual. Ms. Thompson raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "I suggest you both tread carefully. There are layers to this family that are better left undisturbed." As she turned to leave, I exchanged a worried glance with Daniel. "What does she know?" I muttered, the grip on the envelope tightening. "Let's get out of here," Daniel whispered, urgency in his tone. We slipped out of the study, the air feeling heavier with each step we took. Later that evening, the family gathered in the grand living room for a meeting. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the air thick with unspoken accusations and suspicion. I arrived a few minutes late, my heart pounding as I entered the room and took a seat beside Daniel. "Clara," Daniel whispered, his voice barely above a breath, "when you present your findings, make sure you have everything ready. They're not going to take this lightly." I nodded, my palms clammy as I clutched the marriage certificate tightly. I couldn't help but feel the weight of their gazes upon me, a mixture of hostility and curiosity swirling in the air. "Let's get started," Daniel's brother, Marcus, declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs. He had a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through any facade. "We need to discuss the future of the estate." I could see the unease on the faces of my alleged siblings as they exchanged glances. The discussion turned to the management of the estate, and I felt a surge of determination. This was my moment to speak. "Excuse me," I said, my voice firm. All eyes turned to me, including Ms. Thompson's, who leaned back in her chair with an inscrutable expression. "I have something to say." There was a buzz of anticipation, and I took a deep breath. "I believe I am the rightful heir to Mr. Hawthorne's fortune," I declared, lifting the marriage certificate from my lap. "This proves my connection to him." Gasps echoed around the room, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. My heart raced as I held the document aloft, feeling the weight of generations staring back at me. "You expect us to believe that?" Marcus scoffed, crossing his arms. "This could easily be forged." I pressed my lips together, the challenge igniting a fire within me. "I have more evidence," I stated, my voice rising above the chaos. "I've seen letters and documents that link my mother and Mr. Hawthorne. They had a life together. I am his daughter." "Enough with your lies," a voice shouted from the back. It was Rebecca, the youngest sibling, her eyes ablaze with anger. "You're just after our money." "Rebecca, stop," Daniel interjected, his voice sharp. "We need to hear her out." Before I could respond, Miss Thompson stood, her demeanor shifting from passive observer to active participant. "Clara, while your claims are bold, I have information that may contradict your story." The room fell silent, all eyes on her as she reached into her briefcase and pulled out a file. "I have evidence suggesting Clara may not be who she claims to be," she announced, her voice steady and firm. My heart sank as she opened the file, revealing documents that looked official. "This paternity test reveals discrepancies in your lineage," she continued, her gaze cutting through the tension. "Without the proper proof, your claims of being Mr. Hawthorne's daughter could easily be dismissed as fraudulent." I felt the blood drain from my face, and the room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, and I struggled to process the whirlwind of emotions crashing over me: fear, anger, disbelief. "Clara, is this true?" Daniel asked, his voice a mix of concern and confusion. I don't know," I stammered, my mind racing. "I have to see those documents." The family's whispers grew louder, drowning out my voice. I could feel the walls closing in on me, the pressure mounting as I faced the very real possibility that everything I had fought for could slip away in an instant. "Enough!" Daniel's voice rang out, demanding attention. "We need to figure this out, not tear each other apart. Clara, if you truly are who you say you are, then we need to get to the bottom of this." I nodded, desperate for clarity. "Yes, let's figure this out together," I pleaded, my voice breaking slightly. "I just want to know the truth." The family's eyes remained skeptical, but I could feel a shift. Maybe, just maybe, we could uncover the secrets that bound us, and in that pursuit, I would find my place within this tangled web of heritage and legacy. I stood in the center of the chaotic room, heart pounding, as the tension crackled like static in the air. Clara, the woman who had turned our lives upside down, had just revealed a hidden video message from my father. It was surreal to think that a mere flicker of light on a screen could potentially shift the balance of our family dynamics forever. The faces around me morphed from disbelief to shock, each family member processing this revelation in their own way. "Mr. Hawthorne recorded this before his accident," Clara said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. She tapped the play button, and the screen flickered to life. My father's familiar visage appeared, his expression warm yet serious. I felt a lump in my throat as I watched him speak, the depths of his voice sending waves of nostalgia crashing over me. "Clara," he began, his gaze piercing through the digital realm, as if he were staring directly at her. "If you're watching this, it means I'm unable to be there for you. I want you to know that you are my daughter and I love you." The room fell silent, the gravity of his words pressing down on us. "See, my father acknowledged me," Clara said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I didn't come here to take anything from you. I came to claim what's rightfully mine." Daniel, my eldest brother, stood frozen, his mouth agape. His eyes flickered from Clara to the screen and back again, as if trying to reconcile the two worlds colliding before him. "This can't be true," he muttered, shaking his head as if to dispel the truth. "There's no way Dad would keep something like this from us." Before Clara could respond, Ms. Thompson, our family lawyer, interjected with a steely gaze. "We need to verify the authenticity of this video. There are too many unanswered questions." Her skepticism hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. "Questions? You mean doubts?" Clara shot back, her voice rising. "You've all doubted my existence, my intentions, but I'm standing here, holding the truth." "Enough!" I finally shouted, the frustration boiling over. "We're tearing each other apart over a legacy that my father wanted us to share, not fight over. If this video is real, then it changes everything." Clara's eyes softened as they met mine, a flicker of understanding passing between us. "We're in this together, Daniel. Whether you like it or not, we're family now." Just as the tension seemed to ease, the door swung open and an unexpected visitor stepped in, our cousin, Lily. "I just heard everything," she exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency. "There's more to this story, and you all need to hear it." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing again. unsure whether I wanted more revelations or to retreat into silence. Lily took a deep breath, as if readying herself for the storm she was about to unleash. "I found something earlier today, something that could change everything." "What did you find?" Clara pressed, her curiosity piqued. "I found a paternity test," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It proves that Daniel is not Dad's biological son." The room erupted into chaos once more. "What?" Daniel exclaimed, his face pale. "That's impossible." But Lily continued, unyielding. "I found it among Dad's papers. It was hidden away, probably to protect you, but it confirms that your mother had an affair." "Stop it!" Daniel shouted, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "You're just trying to sabotage me." "No, I'm trying to protect you," Lily insisted, her voice rising above the clamor. "This changes everything about the inheritance. You need to know the truth." Clara looked at Daniel, her expression a mix of sympathy and defiance. "This isn't just about the money, Daniel. It's about who we are as a family. If we want to honor your father's legacy, we need to face these truths together." The tension in the room shifted again, this time towards Daniel. I could see the gears turning in his mind, wrestling with the implications of Lily's discovery. "So what now? If I'm not who I thought I was, then what's left for me?" I stepped forward, a surge of empathy flooding through me. "You're still our brother, Daniel, no matter what this test says." "Yeah, but what about the fortune?" he shot back, his voice tinged with bitterness. "What does any of this matter if I'm not even a Hawthorne?" Clara, sensing the fragility of the moment, took a step closer to him. "It matters because your father loved you. He raised you, and that's what makes you family. You can't let a piece of paper define you." Daniel's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a crack in his armor. "But what about Clara? What about her claims?" "Clara deserves to be heard," I said, my voice firm. "She has a right to know her father just as you do. We're all trying to navigate this mess, but we can't do it by tearing each other apart." Suddenly, Clara's expression shifted, a look of resolve settling on her features. "If my father indeed wanted to pass on his legacy, then let's do it right. I don't want to be just a name on a will. I want to honor him in a way that reflects who he was." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, confusion etched on his face. "I want to donate a significant portion of this fortune to the charities Dad supported," she declared, her voice steady. "I want to break this cycle of greed and revenge." He wouldn't have wanted this. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I could see the flicker of realization in Daniel's eyes, slowly coming to terms with the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, we could emerge from this chaos as something stronger than before. "Do you really mean that?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his tone. "Yes," Clara replied, her gaze unwavering. "I want to honor his legacy, not just for myself, but for all of us. The world doesn't need more wealth, it needs kindness and compassion." As Clara's words settled over us, I could see the family dynamics begin to shift. Perhaps this was our moment to rise above the shadows of our past, to embrace the complexities of our relationships without letting greed consume us. "Let's do it together," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "Let's honor Dad the way he would have wanted." And just like that, the atmosphere began to change. The walls that had divided us slowly began to crumble, replaced by a shared purpose. Clara was not just a rival for the fortune. She was our sister, linked by blood and by a desire to create a future that honored our father's legacy. As we began to discuss how to move forward, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The truth had come crashing down like a tidal wave, but amidst the wreckage, we were finding a new path, one that would lead us toward healing and redemption, away from the shadows of greed that had threatened to tear us apart. It was time to embrace the future, not as mere heirs to a fortune, but as a family determined to rise above the past.